stuff that I want to do. It didn't get until like, years later that I'm still feeling the same feeling like, okay, yeah, I'm still at the very beginning of the stuff that I want to do. And you're like, wait a second. Okay, I'm getting my late 20s. Like, I'm still doing the same. Still doing the same thing. That it starts to get kind of stressful, and you're like, well, what is the other thing that I want to do? And your family dynamic changes. Your the things that you're passionate about changes, and so that was the big thing over time. So yeah, at the beginning, I was very excited about it. It just seemed like the whole world was open to me. I loved that I was learning and growing and being challenged every day. And this was a new way to interact and look at people. Like you said, Erik, I use those skills still every day. And I actually had a meeting about a month ago. Somebody from Netflix asked me to meet with them just to talk about my sales skills, because he was like, I need sales skills. Like, I need it to sell our app like we build internal tools at Netflix. It's like, I need to sell this to other people. So how do I do this? Like, where do I start? I use those skills every day, and I came in really valuable in my interview process and everything. So it was a lot of learning. And so I didn't have time for the whole existential crisis. Like, what am I doing with my life? Like, and at the same time I was traveling, like I got to see every state. People would be like, Shaundai, where are you at now? And I'm like, ooh, I'm in Kentucky, or ooh, I'm in Long Beach. Like, have you ever been here? And nobody had been there. Like, I was living it up. I was eating gas station food and like stuff from the fairs and things like that all the time. Like, it was a dream. It was great.
So there definitely was that kind of that thrill, the fun, the excitement. You got to meet all these new people, but it sounds like there still was that kind of feeling of unfulfillment in a way. Like you just felt like there's something more for me that I can, like that sense of there's more out there that I haven't achieved yet. Is that kind of what I'm understanding then?
That was the big thing.
Okay.
And like, it was just like, I would look around. This was actually the moment that I left that job. Was not the exact moment, but like, this was the beginning of kind of the end of that for me. Was I was trying to think about what was my next step. And I would look at all the people who had taken the next step or were like 2 or 3 levels above me. And I was like, none of this is what I want. Like, I don't see anybody around me that's doing what I want that I would be satisfied with. It would always be that same itch. Like, there's something else out there. There's something else out there. At the time though, and for so long, I had no idea what that was. And that would go on in my life for over a decade after that. Is like, what else? Like, what should I be doing? Like, what's great for my skills? What am I interested in? And what could I make money? Because I could draw. I love to draw, but like, I'm not going to pay my bills. So, the options are limited. So,
okay, we'll play on that. Like, keep going on that, because like, drawing, sales, marketing, these kinds of things, business, those aren't really programming and development. So when did you first hear about programming as a career, and like, what was your first impression of that then?
After I left that trade show job, before I left the trade show job, I was having dinner. My cousin's now husband, she brought her boyfriend at the time up to meet us. We really hit it off. We were just talking the whole night. He was in sales, I was in sales, and we were just talking about how like passionate we were about sales and like, talk to people like this and do this and that. He worked at this company called MathWorks in Massachusetts, where I'm from. And he was like, I really think you should consider tech sales. I was like, I'm not really interested in tech other than like, I'll update my phone I don't even think phone updates were really a thing at that time. But I really like, tech didn't seem like anything that I would have ever been interested in. And my dad, he's an engineer, but he's a mechanical, or I think he's a mechanical engineer. He was trying to, like, my whole life, get me into computers. He like forced me to learn how to type with 2 hands and like do all that, like all your art stuff you could use PowerPoint to do. And I had a lot of fun with that, but we're close. But like, I don't know. I think it's just like a rebellious daughter type of thing. I'm like, no, because my dad likes it and I don't like it then. And so I was like, no. And then he was like, no, 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 you don't have to know anything about tech. You really don't, like, all you have to know is how to talk to people, and you can obviously do that. Interviewed with this company, and they were paying well for what like I was doing. I was like, you know, early 20s. It was like, I think 36,000 at the time. I was like, whoa. And health benefits, which I had not had, not, you know, on my own accord. Health benefits, like you could sit down at a computer, like you weren't working at a trade show booth the whole time. Like you could work inside, air conditioning, like all stuff. They had snacks in the kitchen. And I was like, what is this? So got that job, ended up working in sales there. MathWorks, what they do is they create and sell a programming interface, a language and a programming interface. MATLAB is a mathematical computation software, and then Simulink is a system for dynamic, like simulation of dynamic system, or sorry, a system for simulation of dynamic systems. Basically, like it powers everything, like anything that you use, like robotics type of stuff. It's in every car that you've ever used, like the big financial systems, like doing the mathematical computations and things like that. Your phones are powered using MATLAB as the software behind it. So I thought that what I would like the most about that job is selling and like making this great amount of money. What I was the most fascinated with was talking to my customers and finding out what they were doing with the software. So I'm like, oh my God, my customer is Apple, my customer is Google, my customer is Bose. Like, oh my God, you're making the headphones that I use. Or like there was one guy whose customer was farmers, and they would measure the amount and like combination of chemicals that would grow the biggest oranges in the orange grove. So like, I'm like, what? Like you cannot do all that with this stuff. So, but at the time, like my customers were like Apple engineers or NASA, like literal rocket scientists. So I'm like, I'm not going to go to school again for these advanced physics degrees that you all have. That to me is not interesting. So I thought it was cool, but I thought it was very far from what I'd be able to achieve in my lifetime.
That is a huge shift, and going back to school probably didn't seem like the most appealing option. And I find it interesting that you're now a programmer, but you came from that sales background. And how did you have the courage? Like, how did you I don't know, how did you sell yourself on the idea of completely changing your career like that? Seems like a big shift. What were you feeling during that?
There were different moments as I look back. And the hindsight is 2020, but like there were a couple of different moments that I can recognize as moments that I was kind of exposed to it, both at MathWorks and then outside of that. I can't remember a moment where I was like, oh my God, now this is for me. Over time, the passion for it grew in intensity. But I think the big shift, like where I could say, all right, I can do this, was when I saw this ad for Codecademy. And so I thought that I'd have to go back to school. And this ad for Codecademy said, like, there was some comment underneath it, and somebody was like, oh, you don't need a degree to become an engineer. You can, like, you just have to have the skills, and you can get those skills however. So I looked into Codecademy as kind of like a hobby type of thing. I didn't know about the whole like boot camp versus like computer science degree debate and all that stuff. I was like, I'm just going to try it. I'll give myself a half an hour every day to practice it. At the time I had a newborn. And so I didn't have a lot of time. I couldn't just leave the workforce. I didn't have like a ton of disposable income or anything like that. But I was like, all right, I can dedicate 30 minutes a day just to see how this like plays out. And I was just so interested in it that I would spend like 3 or 4 hours a night every night. Like I would, as soon as I put my son to sleep, I would like go straight to the computer and just like start coding, and I would lose track of time. And it started to click for me. I'm like, by that time I was making really good money in sales because I was at the top of the leaderboard for the for the sales stuff. But my big fear was like, sales is what's safe for me. And I can't lose my income. I can't like take a dip or anything like that because I have somebody else that I have to think about. And so I looked up like engineering salaries and I'm like, oh, okay. Like I could probably make something like at par with what I'm doing right now. And so that was when I started to like be like, okay, as much as I love this, and also like it took away that feeling of like, what else is there out there for me? It was just kind of like, this is it. Like there was no like question in my head. I'm like, this is what I want to spend my time doing. Like I would love to do this all day, every day, if I could get paid to do it. Turns out that I can get paid to do exactly what I want to do. So it happened to work out. Got very lucky in a lot of different ways.
I think that says a lot about a career path, though. When you find something that you lose track of time like that, you know, and it's just so easy, like, oh yeah, half an hour turns into 4 hours, 5 hours. I think that says, you know, you've kind of found where you belong. So yeah, and what an exciting time of life too, because it's scary, right? Like I'm a career changer myself. I actually come from teaching education. I taught elementary school of all things. And I had that same kind of experience though, where you start hearing about this thing called programming. You kind of knew that people existed that were doing this thing, but you didn't really know what it was and what they did day to day. But then once you start learning more about it and you start sitting behind the keyboard and like finding the magic that comes with putting some code on the computer, like it totally captivates you. So I completely relate to that feeling, and yet the scariness, the nerves of, like you said, it's that safe thing. You've got your career, it's working for you. You don't feel that total sense of fulfillment, but it's still your safety net, and it's what's giving you your income, and like you said, like your insurance and, you know, your benefits and all these things. So like I totally get that. Once you decided to change though, and you knew that this was what you wanted to do, walk us through what you did to prepare for the career change. And that could be, I mean, that's kind of a loaded question. I know that. So whatever that means to you, that could be financially preparing. It could be you know, like preparing for the actual code. Like, how did you learn to code? I know you said you're self-taught, but answer that however you want. But yeah, I mean, how did you prepare for that career change?
So I started with what I knew, and that would be my advice to anybody that's doing anything that's different or the same from what you do. Start with where you're at. Like, don't look at everybody else and be like, well, how can I make that leap to get where they're at? Just like, where am I right now? What skills do I have? And like, take your tally of all of your different assets that you've got. At the time, what I had was sales skills, especially. And I had a couple of hours that I was willing to dedicate a night, and I had my passion. And so I used my sales skills to find a network and to find a mentor. A lot of this stuff, like I attribute just like great timing, but also I give myself credit, yay, Shaundai, for having the ability to recognize, okay, this is an opportunity. I'm going to take it. I'm not going to have any questions about, or if I do have fear, because I have like high anxiety, I will overthink things to the end. I'm not going to show it. I'm just going to like go out there and say, okay, this is my vision. And I'm just like, any opportunity, I'm just going to say yes to it. So a couple of things that happened was I was curious, and this is just this is a skill that you work on as a salesperson, is never giving the answer, or never like trying to say, okay, I know the answer, and go off and follow a certain path. Just ask questions. Everywhere you go, ask questions to different people. How did you do it? How is what you did different from what other people did? And I made it a goal for myself to meet a different person. At the time I went to make a career switch. I was working at a company called Sales Loft, and that's out here in Georgia. they make software for salespeople. So they have an engineering team, but also a sales team